So, Clay, you recently released a brand new novel, What Kind of Mother? So, I'd ought to begin with, give us the elevator pitch for those who have not read it.
Oh man. I the I don't know if I've perfected the elevator pitch for this one. I still don't know how to talk about it. Can I give you two elevator pitches and you tell me which you feel like is the better one?
Go on then, I'll permit that.
Okay. Uh, what Kind of Mother is about a palm reader, a a woman who kind of makes her living eking by reading people's palms in this kind of sleepy southern coastal Chesapeake Bay town. She reconnects with an old flame whose son just so happens to have been missing for the last 5 years, and nobody knows, what happened to this child. But this palm reader, this woman, uh, decides to help her old flame see if they can kind of find or at least find out what happened to his child. That's version one. Version two is imagine a Nicholas Sparks novel just going right off the rails. And there you have it. Those are my two pitches.
I mean, version 2 is certainly more succinct, isn't it? But
Mm-hmm.
version 1 gives us a more accurate flavor.
I just
See if
don't know. I don't know how to talk about it. It's just like
see
there's yeah.
I don't know if you have secured the movie rights or if you're in conversation to get this adapted for the film, but if you are in a situation where you're pitching it with people, I would kind of do a combination of the two. So I would lead with like pitch two is your opening sentence.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what gets people smiling and nodding their head, like, okay, okay, tell us more. And then you jump in with pitch one.
Yeah. You know, a cooler head would have been I would have practiced this, I would have scripted it out, I would have done all that stuff. But I'm like so kind of like this book kind of has defied all of my personal expectations, and I think maybe readers' expectations too. That like it, in a weird way, I'm at peace not knowing how to talk about this book, for better or for worse. I leave it up to kind of like I don't know, man. It's a weird one.
Well, then that begs the question, what were your personal expectations for this book?
I mean, there was some very specific criteria going in, and you know, one of them was I loved the idea of a person who is, the idea of like a palm reader. Like I love the idea of like a of someone who makes a living doing something that kind of enters into the realm of supernatural. I can see your future. I can read your fortune. I can tell you your fate. But none of it's true. Like I don't know if either of you kind of personally believe in psychics or believe in palm readings or tarot cards, but I tend to be a bit agnostic about it. Like I don't necessarily believe it. I wouldn't mind it if it was true. Like if it really existed, like I would love it. But for when I'm walking down the street and I pass a storefront palm reader, my assumption, my gut instinct is to believe that it's not real. But if you took someone like that, if you took someone who is kind of adamantly not real, like not tapped into the hereafter, or who can kind of read the future, um, if that person were to actually have a supernatural epiphany or some sort of psychic event that leads to something more, like I just love that idea of someone who isn't suddenly has. and like that kind of that pivot of like, someone who's kind of like exploiting the beliefs of their clientele, and then kind of like getting wrapped up in something bigger than them. That was kind of one of the kind of initial core conceits of this book. And then like beyond that, like um I've kind of talked briefly with you earlier about being a dad, and like I'll cop to it. Like I feel like I'm messing up like nearly every day. Like there's something as a parent that you do that will irreparably harm your kids for the rest of their lives, and you won't even know it until years later when the therapy bill comes. And I've this last couple years there have been some kind of particular issues, aren't the right word, but we're kind of navigating. My wife and I were navigating uh, the kind of raising of our kids, and there's certain things that we didn't necessarily account for, things of certain kind of spectrumy developmental kind of things that you kind of you're discovering your children as you go. And for me, like as someone who kind of like is kind of like hypercritical of everything they do, um I just feel like I'm messing up, like I'm mucking my kids up, and it sucks. Like parenting sucks. It's tough, it's hard, and there's no guidebook, or anyone who gives you a guidebook, they're like wrong. And I just feel like all that kind of anxiety of like being a bad parent worked its way into this book, as on the kind of father side, on the mother side, like every parent in this book makes doesn't necessarily make the best decisions, but they do it with love. They do it with all of their heart. And one of the kind of guiding principles of writing this book was that anything in this book had to be done with love. Like I wrote this book with love. Like I like it's weird and it's kind of goofy, forgive me, but like like I have to have a kind of like guiding emotion in all of these books. And the emotion, like the driving force of this book was just, I wanted to write a book with love. um and that's that. Yeah, I could keep going. I could tell you more kind of like mission statements and kind of decisions that went into writing it, and ideas, but like writing it with love, and a non-psychic having a psychic epiphany.
I think as parents, we will always, unfortunately, mess our kids up in some way. That is just an inevitability. And it goes back to what we were saying in the first half about there being perfection within imperfection, and the idea that there is no such thing as perfection. That is an illusion.
Yeah.
But I think, you've hit on the core as to how one should be as a parent, and that is to do everything with good intentions and with love and with kindness. And I think, you know, quite often we are in a situation where, let's say, as a parent, we have two paths that we can take. And either path is going to do some damage in some way, and there's no getting around it. We just have to decide which path do we think is overall the better path, and the path where there will be minimal damage. And so, really, being a parent is such a cruel task that we've been given. And as you say, there is no instruction book, and we just have to do our best. And when we look back and we decide something we did was perhaps not the best path, even though we thought it was at the time, we just have to course correct as best we can and really concentrate as much as possible on the present and the future rather than obsessing over the path. Because if we spend a lot of our time obsessing over past mistakes, then we may risk accidentally and inadvertently poisoning the present and the future.
Yeah. No, it's true. Um, I feel like it goes beyond parent. I think just being a human being, like you need to make more choices based on love than any other kind of pervading emotion. Um, but per, specifically with parenthood, like it's just so interesting how um, we are the products of our parents or lack thereof. Like you know, much like Maddie in the book, I was an only child and I was raised by my mother. Like I grew up in a kind of single mom environment. For the majority of, like for a good portion of my childhood, like it was just the two of us. And she's a potter, and she like like she made her living kind of making these like bowls and pots and mugs and plates and kind of all these kind of ceramic ware, and just very craft oriented stuff, like she made her living with her hands. And as a kid kind of growing up in that environment, like I was just kind of always transfixed with the idea of like, oh, here's someone who, you know, she's basically like, she is her office. Like she, like this is these are her tools. And that a lot of that kind of went into what kind of mother, Maddie is a palm reader, but she's still focused on the hands, and like, she's kind of raising her child, with this kind of craft. Yeah, so like all these kind of like personal parallels and things that, it's not, Maddie is not my mom, and I don't want to kind of give off that impression that like I'm kind of basing this character on my mother. But like it's kind of hard not to think of like how like tough it is to be a single mom, particularly when you have a teenager who wants nothing but to like go somewhere else. Like I was that shitty kid. Like like I remember being that kind of like, by the time I was in my teens, I was like, ugh, I want to live. I want to do like just that kind of like level of disrespect that like, you know, you you do so much. You put so much of your life into like raising your kids, and then like they grow up and then they're like they want to leave you, and it hurts. I'm saying all this as my kids are like awake in the other room. So like I'm planting seeds in their head right now that they're going to hold against me for the rest of my life. When you were
Yeah.
on This Is Horror, Dad, we heard you say,
Well, if you want to hear something that's kind of a shocking or a horrifying statistic that I learnt about the other day. So typically, parents spend about 19 years with their children. The first 18 are when they're living with them. And on average, that final year, that is the combination of total time that you spend with your kid after for your entire life.
that's really sad. I don't want that to. Our kids can stay in the basement for as long
Yeah.
as they can just live
Yeah.
there forever.
Now remember, it's on average, so you can lift that average, but rather than that just being a kind of depressive statement that upsets everyone, that the kind of positive message is that it just shows how finite and precious time is. And there are times as a parent where things are testing and difficult, but just trying as much as you can to enjoy the moment, to not take anyone or anything for granted
Yeah.
because it is fleeting.
But you know what I love? This is what I love about kind of writing books about people who make bad decisions, wrong decisions, like whatever the word is that you want to, the choices that one makes, that these characters make. Maybe I should say the choices that the characters make in the books that I've written, like they're always questionable. Like Was that the right choice? Maybe, maybe not. But like, much like in horror movies, there's always that moment where like, if they just left, if they just walked out the door as opposed to going upstairs, they'd be this would be a
Mhm.
totally different story. But like, people never make the right decisions. Like, people always make the wrong choices. And I love that, like, horror as a genre, uh it's so confounding for readers and audience members. They're like, don't open the door, don't go in there, don't go to the basement, don't do that. And I think that, like, maybe with Parenthood, maybe just with the parents that I write about, like, they're always making choices that I feel like the reader's always like, why did you do that? Like, don't do that. Like, but that's the great thing about horror. I think I'm trying to draw a parallel between, like, my writing. Oh, I hear the train. Um, I like the characters doing the thing they do, and the reader saying, "Don't do that. Don't go upstairs. Run." But they never run. That would be so boring. The end. The book would be over.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, people get frustrated, particularly in films, with characters making these bad decisions. But as you say, if they don't make the bad decision, then you don't have a story.
Mhm.
So
Horror is
that's all.
based upon bad decisions. I mean, it's to me,
Yeah,
I can't find a horror story that existed because someone made a 100% solid good decision. If there's one out there, then I want to read it because somewhere along the line, that
Wrong.
decision got messed up pretty bad.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No, totally. Like, if there was a movie or a book that was like, and they decided to leave the woods, and the end, like, it'd just be, like, they're and it I don't even know if I want to go to the binary of right or wrong decisions. It's just that every decision kind of leads to something else, and it's just that, like, I as the reader, me as the audience member, wouldn't necessarily make that decision.
Hmm.
uh I don't know, like, I it's that tension between, like, the reader or the audience member wanting to, like, don't go there, don't go there, don't go upstairs, don't open that door, but they need to. You really have to open that door.
Right. The trick is making it organic, to
Mhm.
making it to where there's no other choice but to do the bad decision.
Yeah.
And you can tell in stories that when they mess up this bad decision and it's not organic, and because you could be reading the book or watching a movie or watching a TV show, and they like, well, I have to go back because, and then I'm usually like, that's not good enough reason. It's not a good enough reason. But we only have 45 minutes left of the movie, so I guess that's why we're going back.
Yeah.
The good one, you won't care. If it's organic, you won't give a damn. You're like, of course they got to go back in there. They have to save that girl, and it's like, you know, and that's why writing horror crime is pretty good, because you're going to have that one criminal is going to be like, fuck her.
Yeah.
We ain't going back, but I mean, that's reality.
Yeah. I
yeah,
mean, it is that, you say, it's I think it's the kind of, like, emotional grounding of it, that, like, well, yeah, I wouldn't necessarily do that, but I can see why they would do that, or I can understand the it's not even logic. It's like, the impulse is grounded in something that feels real or rooted to who that character is. Um so, like, even though I wouldn't open up that closet, or I wouldn't go upstairs to the attic like they do, like, okay, like, more power to them. Why are they doing that? Maybe it's because, who knows?
yeah. And I've been watching a lot of crime movies and crime TV shows recently. And of course, one of the classic mistakes is there's always somebody going to investigate something without their team. And all of the time, it's like, what are you doing? Bring backup with you, or at an absolute minimum, radio to say what you're doing.
Yeah.
But again, if they did this, if they took this common sense approach, then there wouldn't be much of a story.
Yeah. I think it's self-preservation. Like whether it's a crime film, regardless of the genre, it's like you're kind of at a fork in the road, and it's like, don't do the right thing. Like, don't save that person. Don't go back and help them. Like, if you just turn around and leave, you'd be fine. Like, your story would be over because you would be alive and you wouldn't have to deal with Jason Voorhees anymore. But it's that moment where, like, people are like, I need to go back. I need to turn around. I need to help. It's like that more. It's the kind of like, it's the decision that kind of overrides one's own sense of self-preservation. And it's like you see it in Logan. Like, I'm just thinking, like, what are the movies where it's like, if I don't take care of this kid, or if I don't help this person, or I don't, it's like, if I just think for me, about me, number one, then I'd be okay. It's like you can't open yourself up to anybody, because that's when things get muddy and complicated and complex, and more fun for the audience.
Yeah. See, now I'm thinking about what would it look like if I wrote a story, or anyone wrote a story really, that was traditional horror in the way that it started, but then the characters actually started making good decisions. So you see the person have the decision whether they do or they don't go back, and they decide, you know what, I'm out. And then we switch to another perspective, and maybe we have this like 2 or 3 times. But I think, even though it would be realistic on a story level, it's going to frustrate the shit out of people, because they want to know, no, somebody go into the house, somebody make that bad decision. And you'd almost only do it as a kind of exercise in saying to the reader, you see, you like it when we make bad decisions. But
it's it's like the adverse of, like, horror is denying the reader what they believe that they want.
mm,
And by giving them what they want, you're denying them the actual horror, or
yeah,
the kind of the thing that the genre kind of offers, which is so perverse in its own way. It's like, oh, this is what you want, and they all lived happily ever after, and it's like, not
yeah,
like really, but what about Jason? Like, who's he gonna machete? And there's like, no, well, they went home.
yeah,
They made the right call. They
yeah.
didn't have premarital sex. They didn't do drugs, and they all lived happily ever after.
Yeah. You see, I think this story that I'm suggesting, there would be a way that it could be done, but I mean, I think we're going to need more time than impromptu coming up with it on the podcast right now. But I feel perhaps a lens in which one could approach it is, you probably want to tell it from the point of view of the antagonist, because another thing that you want with story is you want some sort of consistency, rather than jumping to different points of view all the time and kind of changing the story. I mean, in a way, if you did that, that's just a lot of false starts. But I think if you had it in a slasher from the point of view of the Jason style character, maybe he sees people about to enter his territory. He's getting amped up. He's like, all right, here we go. Oh, they've gone. Or you'd have it from the point of view of like whatever supernatural or demonic entity is possessing the house. But I think even though it would be realistic, it'd probably be like a dark comedy, because there is something funny about seeing somebody they're about to make that decision, that they're flirting, there's the literary foreplay of giving you the horror, and then they're just disappearing again.
Yeah,
And the disappointment of the antagonist would then feed into that humor.
that'd be amazing. Jason's
You know,
just like
another
hiding in the closet, just like, why is nobody wanting to play with?
Yeah. Yeah.
another character that you could have would in that kind of situation, and I've always thought about this too, is and it's definitely would be horror comedy. Is you have a character who has compulsive tendencies. They know that they have to leave the house. They've trapped the killer in the house and everything like that. And this guy's in his car, girl, whoever, and everything like that. And they're backing out of their driveway and they're like, "Did I turn off the stove? I don't think I turned off the stove. I mean, I don't want my house to burn down. Everything's in there. I know I got to go back inside." And it's like, okay, so now you've already established this character. To me, I would find that if done properly, that could be very funny.
Yeah.
Because the killer would definitely have an opportunity to dispatch this victim, but then the victim would be like so hapless that they would just narrowly avoid getting killed.
Yeah.
And then they're like, wait, I didn't lock the door. They're back in the car. It's like, oh man, wait, hold on. I got clothes in the dryer.
Yeah.
I don't have to go in the house. I can just go to the garage. Okay, I'm good. But how am I going to lock that door? So you have this compulsive behavior, these things. I mean, and I thought of that because I'm halfway to work going, I'll turn off the stove because I'm like that. So I'm like, I could write about me, forgetting shit, and just having like the worst images in my head of, and having, the apartment complex come, hey, your apartment's on fire. I'm at work right now. Can y'all like put that out?
And meanwhile,
that would be like,
Jason Voorhees is like in your pantry, just like waiting for you to come home. So you
yeah,
can, like,
yeah. They kill, and so then they call the fire department. And he kills the fire department, and they blame me on it. You knew there was a killer in the house. I knew, but I couldn't go back. Would you? Yeah, it could be funny. It could be very, very funny.
totally.
Yeah, well, and there's numerous ways to play that, depending on whether he goes back, and then if he goes back, does he just run into the kind of correct room, turn off the stove, and then go again? And Jason's like, "What the fuck?"
What's going on here, guys? God, this is so annoying.
Yeah, but yeah, there is something there. I mean, there's been a number of fairly successful slasher parodies that are told from more the perspective of the antagonist. I think there's one called Behind the Mask
Yeah.
that came out about 10
Yeah.
or so years ago. So
Leslie
there's,
Vernon, yes.
yeah, that's the one. And
Really good
it
one.
it's a little bit different, but there's also the parody. Is it called something like Dale and Tucker versus Evil? That's another good
Yeah.
slasher parody. So that there's the material out there, but I suppose it's a harder sell to the screen because there's more a niche audience for that, because you've got to be pretty into your slashers and your horror to begin with, and then you've got to be so into it that you want to see an inversion that plays upon the comedy.
Well, I think if Stephen Graham Jones I think he's a prime example of, having your slasher cake and kind of eating it too, where, his Indian Lake trilogy, I think is really, I haven't read them all, so I don't know how it ends, but, at least with My Heart is a Chainsaw, like he's taking those tropes of slasher films and if not elevating them, which I do think he does, I think he's at least exploring them in a way that it transcends its own genre. It's like it's making art out of slasher films, or the kind of like, you know, taking those tropes and showing a certain kind of poetry to them. And I think, like, I have to believe he reaches a wider audience, a larger audience. Like, he's bringing slasher tropes to a literary crowd. I think, I hope, I believe people are like, it's not like, I know uh his previous books kind of reached, like, All the Good Indians. Did I say that right? Oh my god. The only good Indians. Good Lord. That
Wasn't it the only good Indian?
the only good Indian?
Yeah.
I'm so Delali right now. I the only good Indian. That transcended its genre and reached a massive audience, a wide audience.
Mhm.
And I have to believe that My Heart is a Chainsaw. I don't know if it reached the same scope and scale, but it definitely had to go like beyond horror fans, right? Like somebody picked that book up and was like, I don't like horror, but I'm going to read this book
Mhm.
because it's
Yeah,
He's
yeah. And
yeah.
let me jump in with a correction. You were right. The only good Indians. I decided to make it only one good Indian. What an insensitive and incorrect thing to do. But
um,
yeah, we were speaking before about just like kind of
cabins and
conflating
the
titles and
rivers,
making these
worlds, and woods.
unintentional errors. But one thing
He's
that we certainly agree on is that Stephen Graham Jones is amongst the best writers, and he transcends not just the genre, but pretty much any subgenre, anything he attempts to do. I mean, he probably tricked people into reading a slasher book who would say that they hate slashers. I mean, he turned slasher into literary fiction, two
mhm.
things that one would assume are on opposite ends of the scale.
Right. He's
Yeah,
taken that one genre that people who don't like horror use to say why horror is bad and made them read it.
yeah,
That's pretty powerful. So he's taken, he turned it into nearly literature, and they're probably at the point in their lives where like, I can't believe I read this, but I loved it. And so it's and I always try to find a different way to say transcend genre, but with that you can't. There's no other way to say it. It transcends the genre. And I know that if somebody out there doesn't like it, then I'm sorry, but no, we can't think of anything better to say.
yeah,
That's the best.
yeah,
That's like the ultimate compliment.
yeah. I mean, I do feel like My Heart is a Chainsaw. It maybe poetry is not the right word either, but like I like it. It's what I love about that book in particular is that it's Stephen Graham Jones taking something that he loves. He I mean, we all know how much he loves horror films and slasher films, and like, he's watched them all. And the way that he's writing about them is, i i you know, it's finding a certain poetry in the gutter. And like I think that like so much of what the outside world kind of how they view horror and maybe particularly the slasher genre subgenre is that they dismiss it. They kind of like write it off. And here comes this book that ultimately I think kind of says like, no, there's something there. There's something more there. And I'll tell my story, my version of it. And it still plays by the rules of slasher stories, slasher films. But does it with a certain kind of elegance that I it's a really fine line. It's a hat trick that not a lot of authors can do. Like I don't know if you guys remember this book called Zone 1 by Colson Whitehead. It was like a literary zombie novel. And I read it and actually I really liked it. But I think the literary world, the kind of literare, kind of like rejected it. They were like, ugh, like, what is this author? How dare he? How dare Colson Whitehead write a zombie novel? Like, ugh, like, like it was like this, it was offensive. And I think the reviews weren't very positive. Like, it was like, I think it was, if my memory serves correct, and it might not, but like I think people just kind of were like, no, we're not doing this. That's not the case with My Heart is a Chainsaw. Like people, I think, ultimately really embrace that book. Um, but that's my selective memory working. Like, that's my narrative. I'm sticking to it.
Well, we've came up with a lot of narratives during this conversation anyway. We've potentially rewritten the history of Raymond Carver, so let's not stop. Let's
Going.
include Colson Whitehead in the mix as well. But yeah, I mean, there's a novel that seemingly came out of nowhere and like really tapped into the horror crowd, even if the literary crowd were not so happy with it. But
Zone
I
one.
think it's because of these stories that we tell ourselves, like Bob was saying, like if you've said you don't like slasher movies, and then somebody comes along and tricks you into reading a slasher movie novelization, then you're going to do your best to justify why that isn't what happened. That is why we often see so many people trying to use different terms so that they just can't admit that they actually like horror. That's why, Bob's favorite term to hate, elevated horror, showed up. And that's why people will be like, well, really, it's a kind of dark fiction that I write, well, a dark fiction called horror. Dark fiction, suspense, perhaps, and that is what we're sticking to. And yeah, but I think, I mean, one of the things that we try to do with This Is Horror is to have a very broad definition and all-encompassing one. And we've said before, and I think it was with Simon Stranzas that this first came up. But horror, rather than it being a genre, it is a lens. It is a lens in which one views the world through. So then when you accept that, it's like actually every story has the potential to be a horror story.
Yeah. And it's probably horror to this person and might not be horror to that person, but it's like, it's, my horror story might be your rom-com.
Might well be. I mean, there are some rom-coms that the mere watching of them was a bit of a horrifying experience for me.
Done. Oh god, I'm not going to be able to pull this out. There was a David Wayne uh movie starring Paul Rudd. It was like they were kind of like exploring the tropes of the rom-com. It was a film. Oh, I'm not gonna be able to pull it. I'm embarrassing myself now, but like there was like this one film that like really kind of leaned into the kind of rom-com tropes as a way to kind of explore like what it is that why we like those tropes so much, and why is it such kind of like uh, I wish I could.
They came together.
Did you just find it? They
Yes,
came
I
together.
did.
Oh my
Yes, I
god!
did.
There you go. It's a good. It almost works. It's a pretty good movie, but it's fun because it like, you know, it's fiddling with the tropes. You might not like rom coms, but I would recommend this one. Give it a whirl. Try it.
Well, I already like the double meaning on the title. They came together, so there's already something humorous going on with that. So I'm gonna check it out. I'll check it out and report back. Not during this episode. This isn't the point where the video feed is quite quiet and it's just watching me like,
We're
oh.
gonna live stream you watching.
Yeah, it's like the most boring video, just my reactions to a movie.
But they do that. They are
No.
these reaction videos. This is what the kids are doing these days with their reaction. We're just going to do a 2-hour reaction video of you watching a film that dissects and discusses the tropes of rom-coms.
Like, there's so much to say on that, and so much that I probably won't say because I'm not sure it's even worth talking about, but this obsession in trying to become an instant celebrity and documenting your every reaction, to me, it feels like it's quite dangerous and unhealthy, particularly because you're kind of relying on other people for fulfillment and their reaction being contingent on your own happiness. And it also takes you out of the moment that you're meant to be enjoying, because now, rather than enjoying whatever it is you're watching, you're concentrating on filming your reaction to it,
Yeah.
which ironically means it's then going to be an artificial reaction. It's not genuine. And so, I mean, as long term listeners know, I am a pro wrestling fan. Don't hold that against me. But I've noticed a lot of people kind of filming their reaction to when like a surprise wrestler returns or comes out. And but but for them to film that, they have to be while at the show holding the camera. And then, of course, because they're holding the camera, their reaction is completely exaggerated. And it's like, just just enjoy the return. You don't need to film that. And also, I don't know, if you want to become famous or you want to become known for something, I don't know, maybe have it be something that's a little bit more meaningful. Do you really want to be like, I'm known as the guy who did this at the wrestling show?
Yeah.
Like,
Oh,
that
yeah.
better not become a meme. It's like, oh shit. But do you want to be known for that?
It's funny. I mean, like, I feel like I'm kind of guilty of trying to figure out like how much of myself I'm putting out in social media, like with videos. And um I do find that by posting a silly video, I'm getting more of a response or more of a kind of interplay than a picture or a thought, and it is a slippery slope, because all of a sudden I'll be like, maybe I'll do a video today. And it's like, oh my God, like, when did this become life? When did this become my life? And I can see that writ large with other people who kind of, this is their existence, or this is what they do, like, reaction videos or selfies, or like, that like that interplay, that kind of exchange of content on social media, like it's just like, but that's how people live nowadays. It's not the kind of discourse, the give and take. It's more the like presentation. I'm gonna encapsulate my who I am in this bite-sized video, and you're going to like it.
Yeah. If you've
Mhm.
been posting more videos recently, does that mean you're on TikTok?
I I am on TikTok. Uh but I'm doing this like silly thing of like, I mean, I'll just post. I'll like, whatever I do. Like, I mean, Jesus, Lord Almighty, there's like 20 platforms, social media platforms right now, and none of them make sense anymore. That like, I'll just try to do one thing, and then I'll just like blitzkrieg 5 different accounts. So
Yeah.
it's like Facebook, it's Twitter, it's Threads, it's Blue Sky, it's TikTok, and like, maybe someone will respond to it over here, and maybe a few will respond, but it's like, it's diluted. Oh my God, I'm complaining
Yeah.
about social media on your podcast. Kill me now. Like like, that's this is life. This is
Well,
life.
Yeah.
it comes up a lot. I mean, because we need it and we rely on it. Um, I know Michael's been. I see your videos, Clay, and I love them. I think they're great. And
Yeah.
I know Michael's been doing some videos on TikTok because I've seen them because I'm on TikTok, but I don't have any videos. Um, I look awkward when I'm talking on this. So imagine my utter horror if someone actually videotaped me trying to be funny. I'm awkward in person. So that's just me. I don't the concept of being on a video would only amplify how my own self image about myself, and I would be I don't think I'm cut out for it. I've been on television a few times in my life and watched a playback like this, just completely. I don't know, just embarrassed and and I'm like, and I do I really sound like that? I mean, it's like I just can't see. I don't. I can't do anything but other than to me be authentic. The only way I could do it, pull off a video like that, is to be inauthentic under like a persona. I'd have to be probably one of them good old boys. I'm gonna tell you about some horror stories. But that to me, that just feels so superficial,
Yeah.
and it's not authentic. And so I don't know, man, but I love your videos, man. I crack up, man. There's so much energy, and it's like, man, if we could take Clay's energy and bottle it, we could sell it and make a lot of money because there's so much like fire and passion in there. And I get fired up watching them. I'm like, damn, I wish I was in that bookstore with them right now because I'd be running around the bookstore with you. I'd be like, hold on, man, I got this. Don't put me on the camera. I'll be your cameraman.
I need a cameraman. I've clocked myself with a few too many bookshelves. But that's the thing. Like, okay, a couple of things you said. Like I don't know. Like I think the lion's share of those videos, whoever's doing them, they are inauthentic. But there's like this striving. It's like this desire, like this need to connect, and the only way to do it is to kind of like put out these kind of like these versions of ourselves so that other people can kind of put out their versions of themselves, and it's like it's mirrors upon mirrors. But like the decision that I made for myself with these goofball videos is that i I want to, if I could speak passionately or excitedly about um, something that matters to me. And it's like books that I love. Like, I love this book. I want to tell people how much I love this book. Uh, like that's that's just me being silly, but like being sincere with like like the idea that I could tell someone else like, oh, you all like you got to read this book, guys. It's amazing. And like maybe someone will like actually pick that book up. And that's awesome. That's like a really kind of like electrifying feeling that like, and that is the I was going to say that's the extent that that feels like that's the majority of what social media is for me right now, where they're because I'm like I've been getting kind of like a little tired of hearing myself do self promotion, and I still do it. I need to do it, but like I don't want to just do nothing but that. Like I want to talk about other people's books more than I want to talk about my own. Um, uh, Hoping that like someone out there will be like, oh, that guy likes some pretty good books. Maybe I'll read some of his books now. But yeah, what do you need to do?
We're talking about good books. To return to what kind of mother, I'm wondering, how did writing this change you or affect you as both a parent and human being?
Wow, that's a really good question. Holy moly. Uh, it didn't, I don't know if it made me a better parent, but it did give me a place to kind of air out a lot of my parental anxieties. So like in a weird way, like I know we were talking about Animal Collective earlier. Like this to me feels like my acoustic guitar song, but I don't really know how to play the guitar very well. So but like the song that I wrote is very uh sincere. This is like earnest acoustic guitar music to me. It's almost like that guy when you were in college who like was like, "Hey man, you want to come back? I want to like play you this song I wrote." And it's so like so sincere, and it's like, "I love her so much." You know, and you just have to kind of be like, "Okay, man, like more power to you. Like great job. Like you did it." Like for me it's like the catharsis of just kind of getting the rawest emotion out. Uh and I put it all in one place and I wrote it and it's in this book. And I can look at it now and be like, whoa, look at that emotion. Like, wow, that's like it's almost like the butterfly in the jar, you know, like I trapped it, I caught it, and I better punch holes in the lid or it's going to die in there. But encapsulating something that feels kind of raw and organic. But that's writer stuff. Parent stuff, uh, maybe I got it out of my system and I'll be a better parent for it because I won't have it like pent up in me. Um, as a human being, that's tough because I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if I'm a better human being for writing this goddamn book. Um, I I want to believe well. It's kind of the adverse of what we were talking about with the social media stuff, the video stuff. Like there is nothing more gratifying as a human being than to kind of have the conversation with people about like, hey, I read your book and this is how it made me feel. And like that connection is such a beautiful fucking thing. Like it's such an amazing thing that like I regardless of what people think about the book or any book, like that one person across the world, across the country, across the street, they can have this emotional response to it and they can connect with you. And this book doesn't have like a big reach, but we talk about like the only good Indians and like that has like a massive reach. And like whatever side of the spectrum you're on, whether it's this many or this many, like if any one person can connect with something that you wrote and they share that with you, that is a human connection. And I love that feeling. I'll shut up. I love that feeling. That I don't know if it makes me a better human being, but like sharing this book with people and having them connect with it is like that is a like that is amazing. That's all.
Yeah. And I think being able to connect and being able to affect others, I mean, that's what the writing is ultimately about. But I mean, you said that you feel that it doesn't have a big reach. What do you estimate the reach is of your book?
I don't I don't know. I don't know if I want to know for fear that if I find out, I'll be sad that it's not as big as you want it to be. Um, I mean, we're all on this like spectrum, right? I am, I I just don't I can't even begin to kind of fathom how big or how small it is. The only thing, for better or for worse, that I have as an individual, an author, is Goodreads, and Goodreads is a dangerous place for writers to go to. I go there habitually, and you can see the metric. You can see like this many people have read it, rated it, like spoken of it, and that is a number. And I've talked to other writers about this, and it's like maybe it's like if you have this many Goodreads ratings, then you can maybe pontificate that you actually have that this many people read it, but only this many people went to Goodreads and said though. So it's like there's this, and then there's this, and like that's a kind of an ethereal number, and that to me feels like a good kind of like mathematic equation of readership, um, which is a lot more ethereal and kind of gauzy as opposed to like going to my publisher and asking how many books did we sell this month, because that is a grim reality. That is a truth that is in it's uh empirical, and once you know, there's no avoiding the truth of it. The facts don't lie. You sold this, and now that you know, you have to live with that truth, which is scary.
Yeah, there's a big conversation to be had surrounding like worth and sales and how much worth we put in ourselves and our fiction. And it's obviously very complicated and nuanced. It's something that we've touched on before on This Is Horror, but I mean that there is a danger in putting too much stock in, the cold sales figures, as it were, or the number of reviews that we got on a platform such as Goodreads. So, firstly, as we said, if you affect just one reader, if you change their life or you make their day better, that is incredible in and of itself.
Yeah.
Also, as I've said before, I think the way that we win as writers, or indeed in anything we do in life, is rather than say, to be a success, I have to sell this amount of books, or I have to be on the New York Times bestseller, or I have to do X, Y, and Z, to just find joy in the pursuit of writing. If you can find joy within the act, then whatever happens, you have won.
Yeah.
I think the other problem, which I definitely mentioned when talking to Eric LaRocca, is that people can see perhaps initially they didn't sell as many books as they wanted to, or they didn't get as many reviews, and then they self-brand themselves or that book as a failure. But it is not fair and it's not true.
Yeah.
And if we look at all books, I mean, it is a marathon, not a sprint. It is such a long game. I've said before, but people like Edgar Allan Poe, they weren't even considered a success in their lifetime. So to say, oh, this book, which has been out a few months, and I know you haven't said this, but if you were to say it was a failure or it didn't work, it's like you're barely off the starting line. So it's just disingenuous and it's unfair to say. And and also, I mean, I don't even know if it would really be correct to say like, oh, this book sold millions, but perhaps sold millions, and most people gave it a lukewarm reaction. And to say this is better than this other book that sold hundreds, but people's lives were changed. There may have been people who reading that book was the thing that kept them going, is the reason that they are still here in this world. So I think as writers and creatives and human beings, we have to be careful in not kind of putting ourselves down too much or saying that we failed.
Yeah.
That's what I believe. I hope that there's truth in it. I hope that it's not just a story that I tell myself to justify that perhaps, I haven't reached millions yet. But as I told you off air, I'm optimistic, which is why there is yet in that sentence.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I'll say this, that after reading the book, if you go back and you read the blurb on it, it's, to me, you can't really change the blurb. You really can't. And I know we're not trying to get into spoilers here, and I don't want to spoil this book, so I'm gonna be very, very careful on what I'm saying. But if you're listening to this and you're on the fence about reading this book, let me say this: that once you crack the shell of this book open, Clay is going to lead you down a path, and it's going to go into the water, and you're going to be scared, and you're going to continue on this path in the water because you have an idea where this book's going. And I promise you something, you ain't got a clue. You ain't got a clue. If you're looking for a WTF book, this is it. You don't have a clue. Just thinking about it is making the hair on my arm stand up. I am still reeling from reading this book. Once I got to, spoiler, I finished the book that night at 4:00 in the morning, had to be at work at 8. So let me tell you something, folks. This is the one. That's my pitch right there without spoiling anything. I think I did pretty good, though. I think I did pretty good.
That means a lot, man. Thank you. Yeah, but that's the thing. That's the connection. That's the, like, I think this book in particular is not for everyone, but for those who it's for, it's like they have this experience. And
Mm-hmm.
I never set, like, my goal in life, what you're talking about, Michael, is that, like, reaching millions versus reaching a dozen, reaching something in between. Like, I don't, as pie in the sky as it would be great to reach a million people, like, I just want these books, these stories that I'm telling, to kind of find their audience, however few, however many, whatever that number is. Like, I just need to navigate the waters and find those people. And I want to believe they're out there. And maybe I found a few, maybe there's more to be found, but, like, it's just that strange kind of notion of, like, these books exist, and there are books out there that you haven't read yet that are for you, and you have to just find them, or they have to find you. And, like, that is, like, it's daunting but also awe-inspiring, that, like, every book that I crack open, it's like, maybe this book is for me, maybe this is the one. And sometimes I'll be like, no, that one's not for me, and I don't blame the book for that. I don't, like, it's not like I chastise the book for not being for me. It's like, that wasn't that, oh well, on to the next one. But the hope, like, the drive, the compulsion to, like, oh my God, like, this book, like, starting a book comes with such potential. Like, you're entering into a whole new world. And if it is for you, oh my God, it's like the best feeling. Like, I just finished reading, do you know Sean Hamill? He wrote A Cosmology of Monsters. It's a
Yes.
beautiful book. Oh my God. I just finished his new novel, The Dissonance. And it's like, it's insane. We were talking earlier about Us, like, Get Out to Us with Jordan.
Oh, yeah.
The Dissonance is going to confound so many people, because in A Cosmology of Monsters was confounding in its own way, because it's like he's writing on this level, like, this kind of like just the perspective alone is just like, where do these stories come from? But, like, I don't think the world is ready for the dissonance, because it just, if you come expecting A Cosmology of Monsters, you're going to get, like, this rude awakening. It's like epic. It's an epic book. I loved it. I can't wait for more people to read it. And it's like that book might not be for everybody, but for the people who it's for, holy moly, that's their book. We're all just looking for our books.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And that's it. There is no book that is for everyone, nor would you want it to be. It's impossible. It is as impossible as attaining perfection, which is apparently the theme of this entire conversation. But, I think it's a good message. I think it's something that we need to understand because in this social media curated age, there is too much emphasis on perfection.
Yeah.
When people are using filters or they're photoshopping things, not only in images, but now in videos, because the media has sold them this dream or this aesthetic thing to attain that is unattainable. We need to remember that perfection cannot be attained. And with that knowledge, there is freedom to be ourselves,
Yeah.
to bask in our imperfection.
To be raw.
Yeah.
Mhm. Raw.
I love it.
Well, we're already coming up to the time that we have together, unbelievably, but I would be remiss to not ask you to tell us a little bit about your grandparents' river house.
Oh, wow. Um, man, I so a lot of the locations in What Kind of Mother are real. Like they're just places that I kind of grew up around. Um, my grandparents had a house along the Piankatank River. Um, and it's funny. It's interesting because this book is kind of bookended by the passing of both of my grandparents. So uh, I started writing the book when my grandfather died, and then the book came out just as my grandmother passed away. So it's pretty bittersweet. My the whole epilogue of the book is actually my grandfather, um, but their river house is kind of Henry's house, I guess you could say. Um, and when I was growing up, I would visit and spend time there, and you could look out their window at the river, and halfway across the river is this duck blind, which is the duck blind that we talk about in the book, and it's just yeah. I mean, honestly, like I close my eyes and I can picture all these things, and I imbued that those kind of visuals into the book. Um, the duck blind, Henry's house. That's my grandparents' place.
And did you go back to that location for some of the writing? Because I understand that you went back to some of the areas. I'm not entirely sure how near you live to there to
Yeah.
this day.
Uh, I'm in Brooklyn, so I'm a few states away at this point.
Mm.
It's my parents live there now. It's so strange. Like I grew up in Virginia, the state of Virginia, and it it's like my narrative default. Whenever I close my eyes and I start to tell a story, I just like they always have to be in Virginia for some damn reason. Um and but this book in particular is like I wanted to write about this particular area that I spent a considerable amount of my childhood and now my adulthood, because like my parents, my mother and my stepfather have moved out of my childhood home and have kind of now reside along the same river that my grandparents had their home in. So it's like all of my childhood life is just kind of like shifted into this one particular uh, river, the Piankatank River. Like, my parents live there now, and it's just so, like, in a couple of weeks I'll be going down there for Christmas. I wrote a lot of the book there visiting, like, it's kind of bizarre how, I mean, God, I would wake up before the sun, like, at dawn, and like see the sun rise as I'm writing this book about this particular river, and there's the river, and then I can see the commercial crabbers, the commercial fishermen leaving, like going out in their boats and like towing, like pulling up the traps, and like so much of that was just like it had to go in the book. Like that was the story I wanted to tell. Yeah.
It's the epitome of write what you know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
yeah.
exactly what it is.
But I just love that. I just love that I just, like, the brine of it all, the feeling of it. I don't know if I got it in there the way that I wanted, but like it, like just just smelling it, just I can smell it right now. Sense memory, man. It's so intense.
Well, before we go, what were some of the challenges and possible advantages of writing a dual narrative?
Well, I mean, the advantages of a dual narrative is that you can always break out of one given perspective and kind of look from the other angle. You know, I I love first person narratives so much, to a fault, because I just love the uh the blinders that first person narrative puts on a story, that you can't, you all you see is what the narrator sees. There's no third point of view. Like, it's no God's eye. There's no omnipotence. You are relegated to the experience of your narrators, and that is such a handicap. That's like, you're hindering your perspective for the betterment of your story. So to have a dual narrative, it's a cheat. It's a total cheat. It's like, and now we're going, like, we can't tell this part of the story here because we're stuck in this person's perspective. So now we're cutting to so and so. And when I first wrote, like, the first draft of the book, uh, there's two characters. There's Maddie and there's Henry. And Henry's narrative was all one go. It was one chunk. Now it's kind of cut into two. And I was like, I want the heart of this book to be nothing but Henry. And that Maddie's narrative was the kind of like the beginning of it and the end of it. But then you get to like the core, and it's like this black heart of Henry. And my editor was my editors were very kind of like conscious of like, it's a little too much. It's a little tang without the water. And like, we need to kind of break it up and kind of like try to figure out how to navigate the narrative a little bit more. So we kind of split it up into these sections. So it'd be like Maddie, Henry, Maddie, Henry, Maddie. And like that allowed certain discoveries and certain kind of like epiphanies to hit a little bit more. And that was a positive. But yeah, I wanted structurally, I wanted Maddie's point of view, her narrative, to feel like like the story is on her shoulders, and Henry's kind of narrative is somehow embedded within that. Maddie's story gives it strength, but like Henry's is like its kind of emotional heart.
All right. Well, thank you so much for spending the majority of your evening chatting with me. This has been a tremendous pleasure.
I mean, I know I was a pain in the ass to schedule this, but I really want to go on record, and I want to say that like it is so like the pleasure of chatting with you two, and just like I was so nervous at the beginning because I always feel like I want to get it right, but like this idea of like time is precious. You said it yourself. Like, we're slipping off this mortal coil by the second. And I just want to, I really appreciate you guys allowing me a chance to kind of chat. So thank you.
Well, this was certainly a wonderful use of my time and
Oh yeah.
absolutely no regrets. But
Mhm.
it is a wonderful reminder to people, that our time is precious. And
Mhm.
I think some people, they find it difficult to say no to things, but we have to remember that by its nature, anytime we say yes to something, we are saying no to something else. So we have to choose wisely what we do with our time. And I mean, on that note, you know, you choose what you do with your time, or other people will choose for you.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So thanks to anyone out there who's listening to us right now, because you're choosing to be here with us. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, where can our listeners connect with you?
Wow. Look at all those strange social media apps out there, right? Like Threads and Blue Skies and X's and Instagrams and TikTok. I mean, we've kind of covered all the Facebook. Oh my god. I pretty darn Googleable, and I don't know. We'll if there's a social media platform, I'll try it. Um, I'll fail miserably at it, but like I think I'm waiting for somebody to say, "Oh yeah, everybody's going to be over here." Um, I'm not on Mastodon. How about that? I'm on all the others.
Yeah, there's your kind of anti answer where not to connect with you,
Can't find
not
me over here.
Mastodon. Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, I wonder, and that this will probably show the kind of confusion and the disparity in terms of where each person is on social media, because I bet all three of us give a different answer. But if you could only be on two social media platforms, you had to make that decision right now. Which two are you going to go with?
You go first, Bob.
Um, Blue Sky and Substack.
Whoa. How is Substack? I'm totally digressing already.
Um, it's slow building. There are some nefarious types on there, but I'm kind of like in the Brian Keene school of quit, mm, pick one, get tired of being run off from it. No, I'm just gonna block and mute and all that, and I'm just tired of people running people off.
Yeah.
So just you curate what you want to see. I mainly use Substack though because I'm trying to keep my newsletter going.
Yeah.
Um, and which means I have to write a newsletter.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's like, hey, I want to write a newsletter, and I'm pretty excited about it. And then sometimes it's like, fuck, I'm gonna have to write a newsletter. I'm trying to act like I'm excited about it.
Yeah.
And so, but I'm trying to do a little bit better at that. So we're just gonna have to see. And I'm on Threads, but I mean, you said I had to pick two, and I'm not on Threads as often as I should be. Um, it still seems like it's still kind of, you know, there's like I have to keep adjusting it and saying, hey, that's okay. The people I follow, not everyone, because I'm like, who in the hell are these people? Every time I go there, I'm like, I have to adjust it to just the people I'm following.
Yeah.
So it's still kind of wild. And with Blue Sky not having any logarithm in there, it's like it's like it's Twitter. It's Twitter, but it's Twitter but nicer, but it's still broke. So I
Yeah.
have to, you have to kind of search people and stuff like that. But then you find who you're looking for. It's just like, And it's not like saying that you have 2,500 followers and then you can't find anybody like mine was. That's why I'm not on Twitter anymore.
I hate to say it, but like I would, if I had to choose two, one of them would be Instagram, which feels kind of nice to me. I think Instagram is my favorite of them all. But the other one I think would still be Twitter, which is I feel like that's not a great thing to admit, but that's I mean I'm calling it Twitter, which maybe that's my defiance right there. But yeah, Twitter and Instagram.
Well,
How about you?
I would join you, Clay, because my answer is X and TikTok,
Oh my gosh.
formerly known as Twitter.
Is TikTok doing well by you? Are you
Yeah, I'm doing an experiment at the moment on TikTok to see what kind of traction I'm getting, and I think that TikTok has the most potential out of every single social media network. I think that it is growing quickly. I think for better and for worse that video is going to be more a part of social media in the future. I think it's really exciting because TikTok is the only platform that is really putting your content and your posts in front of a brand new audience.
Yeah.
I think the metrics that they give you is fantastic for just seeing who's actually viewing your posts. There's a lot of things that I don't like about it, but there's a lot that I do. And I'm trying to put out the content and the videos that I want to see on TikTok.
Yeah.
I want to see more writers' videos and advice and clips from various podcasts. And it is growing a lot quicker than any other social network in terms of just like literally the growth and indeed my own profile. So, the harder question would be if I said, okay, pick one, because for a long time it would easily be X.
Yeah.
But I don't know, because the numbers are going up on TikTok and they've pretty much stagnated for a year on on X. So I'm not sure. But I mean, Blue Sky, I just duplicate posts from X. Instagram, I just duplicate posts from TikTok. So TikTok and X, very easy to answer.
Yeah. There's so many, too many. We'll all
Yeah.
find each other on some virtual oasis one of these days.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I don't think Blue Sky is going to grow or is going to particularly become the next thing. I so don't believe Threads is that I'm not even on it. I haven't been on Facebook for a very long time. As for Substack, I'm not on it. I mean, I've got a newsletter, but I actually don't classify Substack as a social media platform because it is more a newsletter for me. So, I would say to Bob, it's okay. You can keep your Substack so you can have Threads and Blue Sky. So there you go. You've got a third one out of it.
There you go.
Well, do you have any final thoughts to leave our listeners with?
I mean, I honestly, I'm just trying to imagine who is the person right now who is listening to this moment right now, and just to say again, thanks to them. I call me out on the Carver story if I got it wrong. I want someone to like do the research and see if they can find it. That's my call, like my plea. Someone do the social media thing and say like, hey, read the whole, I listened to the show, and now I'm doing the Carver excursion, and you were right or you were wrong, and then I'll sleep better at night.
Yeah. Let us know on X because we want maximum reach rather than little blue sky. All right. Thank you again for joining us.
Thanks, guys. This is a blast.